We're going to turn to Brother Mark's favorite book. Let's turn to the book of Genesis this morning. Brother Mark gives me a hard time. He's like, are we ever going to get out of Genesis? And Genesis chapter 1. We're going to start over in Genesis. How you like that, Brother Mark? How you like that? I'm just kidding. We're not starting over, but we are in Genesis chapter 1. And I am going to begin what's called a survey of the Bible. And this will be message 1 of it. I don't know how many. It'll be at least, I would think there's probably going to be at least 66 messages in this series, because there's 66 books in the Bible. And I'm basically just going to bring a message from each book of the Bible. And that's why they call it a survey. You're just kind of going over the Bible. And the reason for doing that is I really, I like preaching through books of the Bible, but it takes time. It can take some time, and so I'm not giving up on any. Right now in our series in Genesis, we're in chapter 37, and we will be picking that up at times. And then in 1 Samuel, we're in chapter number 16, and those are kind of good stopping points and good pausing points, is the way I would like to put that. Genesis 37 is where the story of Joseph begins. And that's where that story really takes off. So we'll jump into that story and really focus on it at a time in the future. 1 Samuel chapter 16 is where the story of David begins. That's where so we're at good starting points there for when we come back to those series. And we also have begun a series in Matthew in chapter number 1. Where we're at there, the next part is Christmas. The Christmas story, and so I'll probably pick that back up right in December. And so I've got kind of bigger picture plans for a lot of those. I'm not putting any of them away. We're also working our way through Psalm 119 and the book of Psalms. Also, we're in Psalm 49. But this morning I want to start a survey of the whole Bible, and the reason I want to do that is because I want to touch each book of the Bible, and I want to give you a taste of each one of them. And I want to introduce each book of the Bible to you, because there's a lot of them. There's plenty of them we're pretty familiar with, but there's plenty of them we're not. If I were to ask you about the book of Amos this morning, you might have some trouble getting into that. Or if I were to ask you about the Bible, the book of Hezekiah this morning, there is no book of Hezekiah, so you really have trouble with that one. But Habakkuk was the word I was looking for. I apologize. But if I were to ask you about the book of Habakkuk, you would probably have some trouble with it. And so those are just books that we don't commonly go to, but I do want to touch them. I want to at least kind of get to them and give you an introduction. And then maybe, it'll when I introduce that book to you, it might touch off an interest in that. And then you can read the whole book if you want to. I think Habakkuk's like 3 or 4 chapters, so you'll have that sort of thing. As we get there. We're in Genesis, and we're in chapter 1, and we're in verse number 1. And if you will, please stand for the reading of the Word this morning. Verse number 1. In the beginning, God. In the beginning, God. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to meet this morning in your name. Lord, thank you for being so good to us. Thank you for your word, Lord. And I do hope that we'll stir up a love for your word. And as we introduce these books of the Bible, Lord, as we go over a survey of the Bible, Lord, I just pray that this will be beneficial to people and to folks. Lord, I can't read any of the prophets without going, wow, that is so pertinent to our day. It just pertains to our day. And Lord, I pray that that'll be the same result in each person's heart here this morning, as we get to those at later dates. But Lord, I pray, Lord, that you'll help us to love your word. I pray that you'll help us to get into your word. I pray, dear Lord, that you'll encourage each and every one of us this morning. Strengthen us. Have your way with us this morning. Please take over in Jesus' name. Amen. And you may be seated. Thank you for standing. The word Genesis means beginning, or it may mean origin. Either way, it has the idea of a beginning. Okay. The first word there. We read in the beginning, right? That is one Hebrew word. If you were to read the Hebrew Bible, you would find one word there. You would not find three. You would not find in the beginning. You would find Bereshith, which means in the beginning. All right? So that's the translation. That's how it translates into English. But that's the Hebrew word Bereshith. And I may not even be pronouncing that correctly, but it means in the beginning. In the beginning. The book of Genesis, it might be my favorite book of the Bible. I really don't know. It's an incredibly interesting book of the Bible. It has all kinds of interesting things going on in it because it is literally what scholars call the seed plot of the Bible. And they call it that because you will find every doctrine of the Bible in the book of Genesis. You will find every one of them. Every biblical doctrine that you will find in the New Testament, you will find it pictured in the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis is amazing. The book of Genesis covers more time than the rest of the Bible combined. I mean, it covers tons of time. In fact, Genesis chapter 5, for example, covers 1,600 years. America is only 240 years old, just to give you a comparison. Do you know how much has elapsed in 240 years? I mean, we can talk about things like the Revolutionary War, or the War of 1812, or the War with Mexico, or the Alamo, and things of that nature. The Civil War, and the Spanish-American War over Cuba, and the Cuban Missile Crisis, and World War I, and World War II, and just on and on and on, Vietnam, and just on. And those are just the wars. Books have been written about just the wars that America has been, but man, just the peacetime things that America has accomplished. The accomplishment of discovering flight, and the accomplishment of discovering the atom, and the accomplishment of discovering DNA, and just on and on and on. The list of accomplishments that go to America just in 240 years. And you'll find that the guys who really know what they're talking about in American history, they're going, you really need to listen to the God of the Bible. You really need to get with that God. He knows what He's talking about. He knows what He's doing. You won't find, if you study the founders of the nation, there's very few, maybe a handful of guys, and most of them were disowned by the end of their life, but you'll find very few who didn't espouse a belief in the God of the Bible and serious convictions about, hey, I think George Washington said, our duty as American citizens is first as our duty as Christians. That comes first. And man, it's amazing when you study those guys and they had such a conviction about the Bible. I think it was Noah Webster that said, children in school should first be taught in the Bible. Absolutely. He's the guy who started Webster's Dictionary. He signed the Declaration of Independence. He said, our children in schools, and he started tons of schools. He said, children in school, first thing, teach them the Bible. It's the first thing they need to know. It's the most important thing they'll ever read. It's the most important thing they'll ever get into. And so, anyway, I'm getting off, but Genesis is an amazing book. It is the seed plot of the Bible. It's an incredibly deep book. It has every doctrine in it. These aren't doctrines, but it has the first day. The first day of recorded history is in Genesis chapter 1. It includes the first week that ever existed. It includes the first man and the first woman, like Brother Mark pointed out in his Sunday school, the first marriage. It includes the very first family. It includes the very first sin, original sin. They ate a fruit. No, the original sin is they rebelled and were disobedient to God. And they had one command. They had one thing. Don't eat of that tree. They blew it. One thing. And it's to go to show you, no matter what, we would have blown it. No matter what. I mean, you can have the easiest command in the world and you're going to blow it. At some point, you're not God. God is the only perfect being in the universe. And at some point, imagine the best people that you know. I can find something wrong with them. I guarantee you, I can, because I've found in the Bible perfection. I have found a perfect being wrote this. And He has given us what perfection looks like. And I'm telling you, we fall short. We do. I say we, because we're there. It's all of us. And I'm just thankful to be saved. I'm thankful to be forgiven of my failures. I'm thankful to be forgiven of my sins. Because good grief, it is impossible to be perfect. Doesn't mean I don't want to get in the Bible and find out more of what God says and try to apply those things to my life. Doesn't mean because man, there's something blessed about that. The Lord starts blessing that. And He starts blessing that intention. And I want blessing. I'm just telling you. I love blessing. And so that's why I want to live for the Lord. I want to live for the Lord so He'll bless me. But I also want to live for the Lord because I love Him. I'm just thankful for what He's done for me. He created me. You know, as bad as life can get, and it can get pretty bad, because ever since original sin, sin is here. And so life can get pretty bad at times. But I'm telling you, life is good. Life is good. Just overall, when you look at the overall big scheme of things, overall, it's good. It has some bad things in it. There's some things I wish that weren't there. I've had some nightmares at times. I've encountered some people I'd rather not encounter. I've encountered some things I'd rather not encounter. But I'm telling you, life is good overall. And I'm telling you, that all goes back to our Creator. He is good. And it's not His fault we decided to fall. It's not His fault that we decided to fail Him. It's not His fault that we decided to blow it. I'm speaking for Adam and Eve, but I'm also speaking for me. It's not His fault that I decided to get into sin in my own life. It's not His fault that I've decided to do has He allowed those things? Sure. But He's also allowed us to choose right, too. I was talking to Brother Robbie Reyes, Saturday. We were running a mail route together. I was training him how to do it. And he's a wonderful kid. I love Brother Robbie. I really do. He's a sweet kid. He has a very bad past. And he'll share this in his testimony. And he'll share this when he's preaching. So I'm not telling you anything he wouldn't tell you himself. He got involved in gangs when he was a teenager. Absolutely got involved in gangs. Well, actually, I think it was from the time he was about 7 or 8. And it was because of his teenage brother. His teenage brother got involved in gangs. And so he got Robbie involved in gangs. And so Robbie has a very rough past. There's some very rough things. And then he wound up getting surrendering to the Lord. And the Lord called him to preach. And he started getting serious about the Lord. And so he'll tell you, he said, look, it's really up to you what you want to do with your life. It really is. He said you can be raised in a Christian home and be raised and pointed toward God and completely decide you want nothing to do with God. Or you can be raised in a Christian home and completely brought up around godly things and you can decide, I really like this. This is wonderful. And continue. Or you can be raised in the worst possible imagined home you can possibly imagine and come out loving God. Amen. Come out being thankful for being saved, like Robbie. Okay? And being thankful for being saved. And at some point you got to realize that. You got to realize it's not God's fault. We blew it at some point. And anyway, Genesis contains that, the original sin in Genesis chapter 3 and verse number 6. Genesis has the original, it's called the Proto-Evangelium, which means the original, the first giving of the gospel. In Genesis 3:15, where it says, and I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and he's talking to the serpent there, and between thy seed and her seed, it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. In other words, he says the seed of the woman will bruise the serpent's head. And what was that? Jesus literally was the seed of a woman. But He was not the seed of a man. Not at all. He was the seed of the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit of God took that seed and placed it in a woman's womb. So He was born of a virgin. And that seed bruised the serpent's head on the cross. And so you have the first giving of the gospel. Oh, He defeated the serpent right there. Satan lost right there. I personally, a lot of people are like, boy, and maybe, I don't understand fully the mind of the devil, okay? I don't understand. Maybe he did rejoice when Jesus died on the cross. I kind of doubt it. I think he knew he lost right there. I think that's why he tried to use Peter to get Jesus not to go to the cross. You remember that? When Peter was like, oh, don't talk like that. And Jesus turned to him and said, get thee behind me, Satan. Because Jesus knew who was really talking right there. He could read between the lines. He had discernment. Peter had good intentions, but the devil was using those good intentions. And so Jesus was, I don't think he was actually talking to Peter at all. I think he might have been, but he was looking beyond. He's not wrestling with flesh and blood. He's wrestling with the spiritual wickedness in high places and the rulers of the darkness of this world. And so, anyways, oh, it's wonderful. Genesis gives us the first gospel. Absolutely wonderful. Right at the beginning of sin. In the same chapter. We're told about the first sacrificial lamb in Genesis chapter 4, where Abel sacrifices a lamb, and that's a picture of Jesus. Remember what John the Baptist says, "Behold, the Lamb who comes to take away the sin of the world." And then in chapter 4, we're also told about the first murder. The very first murder. It's brothers of all people. It's Cain killing Abel. The first family strife there. And boy, it got escalated pretty good. You have the first independent or individual judgments. That's handed out in Genesis chapter 3, where he hands out a judgment to the serpent, hands out a judgment to the woman, and hands out a judgment to the man. And then later on, you have him judging Cain. And so you have worldwide judgments right after that. You have Noah's flood. It's a picture of the fact that God has the right to judge His whole creation. And one day, He's going to do it again. In 2 Peter chapter number 3, it describes it in vivid detail, how the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Oh, He's not going to judge it with water again. No, next time it'll be fire. Just the opposite. And next time He's going to burn everything up. And it says we're going to have a new heaven and a new earth. We're going to have a new earth because He's going to burn this one up. That's why the Bible always is trying to get us not to focus on our material possessions here. They're going. Even if we're alive and around at the time that He burns the earth, here's the thing. We're going to leave it behind one day, and so we need to have our focus on heaven. And we need to have our focus on heavenly things. And so it includes the first worldwide judgment. It includes the first genealogy, and that's in chapter number 5. It includes the first mention of grace in chapter number 6. Verse number 8 is the first mention of the word grace. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So thankful for that. Now, don't get me wrong, Adam and Eve received grace when they received the coats of skins to cover their bodies. A picture of the fact they were placing their faith in God's provision to cover their sins. Abel received grace, but the first mention of it is with Noah. The first mention of being justified by faith is mentioned in Genesis. It's in Genesis chapter number 15 and verse number 6. It says that Abraham believed in the Lord and God counted it to him for righteousness. And so you have the first mention of believing, placing your faith in the Lord, trusting Him, and it was counted to him for righteousness. In other words, he was made right with God. You have the first, believe it or not, the first mention of eternal security is in Genesis chapter number 19. If anybody should have lost their salvation, it is Lot. You cannot read the story of Lot and not go, oh, that's tragic. His story grosses you out if you really stop and think about everything that went on in Lot's life. You say, well, could Christians really do that? Lot did. He did. Could Christians really get that low? Lot did. I don't enjoy that story, but I am thankful he didn't lose his salvation. I'm very thankful that the New Testament points out he was a righteous man. It says it 3 times. He was a justified, righteous man in the eyes of God. And that's all that matters. Now, if we all looked at him, we go, wow, that dude is not saved. There is no way. Doesn't matter what our eyes. In the big picture and overall, all that matters is what God sees. And Lot was a saved man. So we have eternal security pictured there. The pictures of the Messiah in the book of Genesis are absolutely phenomenal. Chapter 4 mentions the lamb, but chapter 22, where Abraham is going to sacrifice his son Isaac. A picture of God the Father is going to sacrifice His Son, Jesus Christ. And it's amazing. The pictures in that. They walk for 3 days. Jesus is dead for 3 days. They walk to Mount Moriah. A lot of biblical scholars believe that's actually where Jesus was crucified, believe it or not. Many years and thousands of years in the future, that would be the actual spot where Jesus is crucified. Now, I tend to like that. It's either that or it's the Temple Mount, where Solomon winds up building the temple. Either way, that's a neat little spot, isn't it? But Abraham is going to sacrifice his son Isaac there, and it says that Abraham took the wood and laid it on his son's back, and his son carried it up to the mountain. A picture of Jesus carrying his cross up to the mountain. Absolutely wonderful picture of the Messiah in Genesis. And then you have, Genesis in chapter number 37 and and also 39 through 50 where it talks about Joseph. There is probably no better picture of Christ in the Old Testament in the life of a human being than Joseph. There's probably no better picture of what Christ went through. Jeremiah is a prophet that is a type of Christ. David is a king that's a type of Christ. In other words, they're a picture. They're not Christ himself, but they're a picture of what his life would look like later on. And it's absolutely, Joseph is probably the most vivid picture of Christ's life later on. You can't make this up. There's no way some man made all this up. It's absolutely wonderful. And in just the book of Genesis, the things that are contained here. The messianic appearances. And in other words, what I mean by that is where Jesus actually appeared. Literally. In Genesis chapter number 16, where he appeared to Hagar, the Egyptian, and he told her things about, and gave her prophecies about Ishmael, and he saved the boy. In chapter number 18, what's amazing there is 3 men show up to visit Abraham, and it's Jesus and 2 angels. It's literally Jesus Christ shows up to talk to Abraham. Abraham knows that. He runs up and bows down to him. Angels don't let you bow down to them. God does. In the next chapter you find 2 angels going to Sodom and Gomorrah. You don't find Jesus going to that one, but you find him appearing in chapter 18 and actually literally walking with Abraham. Amazing appearance of the Messiah. In chapter number 32 you find Jacob literally wrestling with Jesus. It's absolutely amazing the amount that Jesus appears just in Genesis alone. There are other appearances throughout the Old Testament of him, but it's amazing just how much he appears just in the book of Genesis. The blood atonement is first introduced in the book of Genesis, where obviously God had to shed an innocent animal and clothe Adam and Eve. On the next chapter, Abel had to slay a lamb. So you have the blood atonement, the shedding of blood. With it. And Hebrews tells us, without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. And so when Jesus shed his own blood, now there gets to be remission of sin. That is a happy, good story. I'm telling you, that is good news. That's the meaning of the word gospel. That's good news. Without that, we have no hope. Without that, without the sacrificial lamb, there is no hope. And I'm telling you, that's absolutely wonderful. Tithing is first talked about in the book of Genesis, believe it or not, where Abraham tithes to Melchizedek. And Genesis is a just mind-blowing book. Because every doctrine you find later on in the New Testament, and I haven't even exhausted them. It's just a taste. Every doctrine you find in the New Testament, you will find in Genesis. Genesis is a monumental book. There's probably no book more attacked in the Bible than Genesis by scoffers of the Bible. Probably no book attacked more than Matthew is attacked quite a bit by it, by scoffers. They hate Daniel. They hate the book of Daniel. Absolutely hate it. Because he predicted basically Revelation. And they hate that about Daniel. They're like, there probably wasn't even a guy named Daniel. He really lived. Actually, we found records. They called him by his Babylonian name, but he did exist. The guy rose to second in the land under several regimes. He really did. They've actually found literal evidence in Egyptian histories of Joseph. And they gave him an Egyptian name. And if you remember, they married him to an Egyptian priestess. And so the Egyptians basically adopted him. You remember, his brothers couldn't even recognize him because he looked like an Egyptian. And so the Egyptians gave him an Egyptian name. They rose him up to vice pharaoh in the land. They actually have found the documents to document that. It's shocking because no one's really ever talked about, other than Pharaoh, Egyptian kings. And then here comes this second-hand guy. And there's lots written about him. And the people loved him. They found statues. They found a statue of Joseph in Egypt in a small pyramid. They found a guy sitting on a seat in a small pyramid, and he's got a coat of many colors sitting on that seat. Absolutely amazing archaeological finds. But no one, all the scoffers, no, that's not Joseph. No way. Yes, it is. Genesis is an absolutely amazing book. Genesis even talks about the rapture and pre-trib rapture. Enoch was not, for he walked with God, and God took him. And you have the rapture just before the great tribulation of the earth, the great flood, and on and on and on and on the list goes. Genesis is an amazing, amazing book. This morning I want to shift gears a little bit. And as Genesis is a book of beginnings, I want to encourage you this morning to begin some things. To begin some things. Maybe these things that I'm going to mention to you, you've already began. I hope so. Either way, I want to talk to you about beginning some things. First of all, if you haven't, I want to encourage you to begin a walk with Jesus. Begin a walk with the Lord. What that means is inviting Him into your life, inviting Him into your heart and saying, Jesus, I need you. Jesus, please come into my heart. I don't understand everything. I'm a mess, but please come in my life. Please start working in me. Lord Jesus, please forgive me my sin. However you want to phrase it. But begin a walk with the Lord. Our verse, our half a verse that we read, what did it say? In the beginning, God. Begin with God. Start right there. Begin there. Start a walk with God through His Son, Jesus Christ. We're told in Genesis chapter number 5, I mentioned Enoch. In verse number 21 it says this, And Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God. Begin a walk with God. Enoch walked with God. It goes on, it says in verse 24, And Enoch walked with God. He walked with Him. And He walks with me, and He talks with me. I've often thought, I wish the words in that, I love that song, by the way, I'm not knocking that song, but I wish that song said, And I walk with Him, and I talk with Him. Because it's about Him. It's really about Him. It's about having a walk with Him. It's about having a walk with God. Begin a walk with Jesus if you haven't already. Let everything else in your life, listen to me, flow from that. Every other decision in your life should flow from that. You begin with God. In the beginning, God. Start a walk with Him and let that influence every area of your life. Let Him start having influence in every area of your life. I hate drinking water. Just as an example. I don't like water. I don't. I'd rather have sweet tea. I'd rather have Kool-Aid. I'd rather have soda pop than water any day. My son is laughing at me because he knows how I feel. I'd rather have something with some flavor, not unsweet tea. Well, if you like unsweet tea, I don't understand you. But I want something that tastes good. I've never been water.
Well, then why do you like propelled water?
Leave me alone. Water, come on. And so out here lately, I've been, Keithan just let the cat out of the bag. I've been drinking some Propel water. Propel water has flavoring in it. It's sugar-free flavoring, and I like that. And so I'm I'm trying to train myself into really liking water. I tell you what, I have no problem drinking a ton of water if I've been out sweating, hot all day. In fact, that's exactly what I want. I need to stay, soda pop dehydrates you. Stay away from that when you're hot, and sometimes that's what you want, but it's dehydrating you. Boy, that water just is refreshing. You know, Jesus said, I am the living water. In fact, I didn't even think of this, but you have your first mention of people getting saved at wells in the book of Genesis. You have Hagar and Ishmael getting saved at a well. You have when Abraham's servant finds Isaac's bride, where does he find her? At a well. Jacob finds his brides at a well, and on and on and on. And and it's a picture of Jesus finding His bride at a well. Later on, He finds a woman at the well and introduces her to living water. Something absolute. I really think it's my sin nature that doesn't like water. I think there's something about possibly my fallen nature that doesn't like it. There's something about it that just wants everything sugar-coated and wants and something about my fallen nature. I think I have fallen taste buds. I hope, maybe not. I mean, I don't understand everything. I really don't. It's something I've thought about. I may have some fallen taste buds. It may be why I constantly crave more salt than I need or more sugar than I need. I think there's something fallen about me, even in that area. I hope in heaven I can eat whatever I want and it has absolutely no effect on me. I hope that's the deal. But it may be in heaven, in my fallen body, I don't even want sugar. Maybe I'll never get tired of manna. Remember the guys in the wilderness got so tired of manna. That's their fallen nature. And the manna was a picture of Jesus. They were getting tired of the bread of life Himself. They were getting tired of Him. And all of us are susceptible to that. Begin with God and let everything flow from that. Young people or even possibly middle-aged people or something, it may be that in the future you're going to begin a family. Perhaps you're going to begin a family. Begin with God there. Begin with God. The Bible encourages you to marry when you marry. The Bible doesn't command anybody to marry, but it does say if you have that need, it's better to marry than to burn. And I'm quoting 1 Corinthians chapter number 7 right there. I believe it's talking about burning with lust, to be honest with you. And that's not the only reason to marry, and that's my point. Begin with God and let Him bring your spouse to you, if that's His will for your life and if that's what you're going to need. Begin with God. Begin that family with God. You say, well, I'm not really interested in starting a family. I'm just interested in dating or something like that. I hear that from teenagers all the time. Here's the thing. That's the only reason to date. That's the only reason to even start thinking about getting into a relationship. You're looking at possibly beginning a family. Even if that family is only a family of two, there are some people that aren't able to have children. I'm not trying to get into too many details here. I'm simply saying you've still started a family. And that's the purpose. It's those two to become one. That's God's purpose for marriage. It's for those two people to become one. I'm constantly trying to get Jonica on the same page with me. Good grief. She better shape up. No, I'm just teasing. I do find it absolutely wonderful what God is doing in our personal lives. We are not the same. We're not. And that's the thing about men and women. You're going to find they're not the same. The world may be confused about that. They may think women are the same as men, or they may think that there's tons of different genders and not just two. Sorry, there's only two, and they're very different. They're very different. Brother Mark was talking about this morning how awesome the women treat their wedding dress and how special that is. I'm like, can't we just, I don't know, rent one, wear whatever? That's more my thinking, not women. And I'm telling you, that's an absolutely wonderful union. It completes each other in God's plan. The husband and wife come together and complete one another. I think it was Dave Hardy who was saying about his mom. He was saying she was soft and sweet, and he could always go and talk to his mom. And then he said his dad, though, his dad was rough. His dad, and the two of them completed one another. They did. There was some. I think he was talking about his mom's face and how soft it was and everything. He said, and then you touch my dad's face, and it's like sandpaper. There's something about it, isn't there? Where the two of them complete one another. It might be in the Lord's plan for you that you possibly begin a family. Okay? Begin with God. In the beginning, God. Begin right there. It may be that you're possibly going to begin a career, or begin a job, or possibly begin a college deal. I don't know. I don't know what to call it there, but begin with God. Begin with God. You say, but this is what I want to do with my life. I understand, and that may be God's will for your life. But check with God first. Yes. Begin right there. This is the book of beginnings. Begin with God. God, what do you want me to do with my life? Lord, what school do you want me to go to? Lord, do you want me to go to school? You know, those are questions. And a lot of times He'll tell you exactly what you need to do. He'll start really laying it on your heart. He'll start really showing you. Begin with God. Have a big picture and also a small picture of what's going on in your life. But begin with God. I also want to say this. This is just a side note. This message is about beginnings. But it's also important to finish well. I mentioned a minute ago, Lot didn't finish well, and I still believe he wound up in heaven because I believe it was God that saved him. It was God that forgave him of his sins, past, present, and future. It was God that forgave him. It was God that sealed him. But there's a lot of things we need to finish well. He said, I didn't start off so good. I've struck out 3 times already. Well, you're up to bat again. This one can be a home run. This one can be a triple. This one can be you can at least get on base with this one possibly, and someone else can knock you home. And what I'm saying is, just because you've whiffed on the first 3 at bats, don't give up. Okay? There's actually a lot to be said about finishing well, being possibly more important than how you began. If you read about George Washington, he began terribly, awful. I mean, he was getting schooled. Okay, the British were making him look stupid. By the time he was done, here was the great redeeming thing about George Washington. All of his biographers will point this out. He would learn from his mistakes. That's what he would do. He made a lot of them. He made a ton of mistakes, but he would learn from them, and he would begin again. And he had it in mind. I'm going to finish well. They wanted to make him king by the time he was done. The people of his day wanted to make him king. He's like, no, we just got out of that. I won't be a king. I'm telling you, everybody in the U.S. would have made him a king. That's how popular he was. That's why he's on the $1 bill. Everybody loved him. He didn't begin so good. Finishing well is just as important as how you begin. So even if you've gotten off on the wrong foot, don't give up. And this is the last point I want to bring, and it ties in with that. Begin again. Begin again. You may be at the point in your life where maybe you need to start again. Maybe you need to start over with something. Maybe you need to start over with some relationship. Maybe you need to start over in the area of family in some way. Maybe you need to start over in the area of career in some way. Maybe you need to start over with the Lord. I don't believe you've lost your salvation if you're genuine, but maybe you need to rededicate your life to Him. Maybe you need to say, Lord, I've wandered from you and I want to start over. Lord, I want to start right here. I want to begin right here. Boy, Brother Mark was teaching that lesson this morning on marriage and love. And he was talking about honoring all kinds of people and different things. He wasn't just talking about marriage. I've often thought, man, I wish I could go back to when I was a teenager and find out what was expected of me as a husband back then, and start preparing for being a dad back then. And can't do that. I've got to start right now. I have to start right where I'm at. So I will begin right now. I was things he was saying in his Sunday school lesson, I was going, you know what, I need to start doing a better job of that. And I'm going to start right now. I've been married 9 years. I can't go back 9 years ago and start there. I have to start now. So I will start now. Can't redo the other stuff. I will start right now. I will begin again. Just so you know, he was talking about honoring your wife, always listening to her and stuff like that. I always listen to Johnny. I think I got done with the mail route, was it yesterday morning? And, okay, the night before, she had been telling me something about going out to eat with her mom. She was telling me something about it. And I thought she said she was going the next morning. I didn't put it together that she was, I thought she was saying she was going to go the next afternoon. I didn't put it together that she was going the next morning. So I got back from doing the route. I went over and visited my mom for a minute, and I think I went back to the store building there and gotten some things out of the freezer. And so then I went home, and around 8:45, she was supposed to leave at 8. And around 8:45, she texted me and she said, "Did you forget I had plans this morning?" And to be honest, I didn't fully hear her. I could have, though. At the same time, that same night, I was reading a book and she was interrupting me reading. She's so mean to me. At the same time, that night, she was wanting to talk to me about her brother. And I could sense that, so I put the book up and we had a conversation about her brother. And in the Sunday school lesson, I'm going, you know what, I need to do a better job of that. I stopped and paid attention to the conversation about the brother. I didn't pay attention to the conversation where she just wanted to go out to eat with her mom. So I whiffed on one and I hit a home run on the other. No, but I'm going, you know what, I need to do a better job of honoring my wife. I really do. And I can honor her by listening to her. What I'm saying to you is I've got to begin now. Can't go back yesterday. But I can start right now. I can begin again. I can rededicate myself to them. I can rededicate myself to my wife. I can rededicate my life to the Lord. I can rededicate myself to my church. I can rededicate myself to the Bible. Oh, I'm so tired of reading the Bible. I understand. I get it. You can rededicate yourself to it. You can get back into it. Why don't we begin again? We're beginning a survey of the Bible. I hope you'll enjoy these messages. I hope you'll get a lot out of them as we try to touch each and every book. But Genesis is a book of beginnings, and I love beginnings. It's a fresh start. Every day the sun rises is a new beginning. I love the sunrise. Why did I do that? It's not over there. Every morning, whenever I run the mail route, I get to Hugo around 5 in the morning. I get the mail. And as I'm driving back this direction, I get to watch the sun come up. It's such a good feeling to watch the sun come up. It really is. It's absolutely wonderful. A lot of times it's so beautiful, I have to pull over to the side and take a picture. Man, and it just feels so good because a new day is beginning. I love beginnings. I really do. I love beginnings. It's the God of the Bible that every time even something's ending, something new is beginning.
Yes, amen.
Even when a person's life, even when a Christian's life is ending, it's just the beginning.
Yes.
It hadn't even begun yet. At the end of the Bible, where the Bible's ending and it talks about how things are ending, it's just beginning. It's just beginning. It starts talking about how heaven's going to be and everything that's going on there. Oh, Can I ask you this morning, what do you need to begin again on? What do you need to begin? What needs to start here? Do you need to begin a walk with Jesus this morning? Nothing else is going to matter compared to that. Do you need to begin a walk with Jesus this morning? Maybe this morning you need to begin again. Rededicate your life to the Lord this morning. I want to ask everyone to stand, every head bowed, every eye closed this morning. In the beginning, God. Let's take a moment and ask Brother Mark to come and sing.